Welcome back. This, of course, is the last part of our newspaper review this morning. And things are heating up even as we move on, talking about what's happening between the judiciary and the executive, of course, right before the break. Is it an economics issue, the government just trying to cut costs, and the judiciary also falling in line in terms of that? Or is there a bigger disconnect in terms of how these two arms of government are relating? Okango, I want you to weigh in on this as well, because it almost seems like from what the pressers, the CJ had in his presser yesterday, the economics of running judiciary was a small part. There was a bigger issue at play, and that's what he was trying to address right there. When you're choosing functions you go to, saying that at times is, even being recognized as state functions is something that's lacking. Very many issues that you feel that if relationships were fine between judiciary and executive, this doesn't have to come to a presser. You can call State House, go to State House. There are mechanisms to deal with this.
I think the Chief Justice, Honorable Maraga, has a way of communicating to his colleagues in the other arms of government, and he can do that perfectly. But by the time the Chief Justice chooses to go to the public, remember, he's also a trained lawyer, the judge. He knows that the sovereign power that has been delegated to his department is from the people. So he has to go back to the people. And that's why we say that that sovereign power must be delegated. Now, I was very keen to listen to what he was saying. Remember, the budget cuts are there. And we have said, in these budget cuts, it is a decision-making disorder to cut budgets for the judiciary, where the rule of law is implemented. Because he also said there are certain individuals in government that are not very happy with the decisions that the judiciary have been making of late. He gave so many examples. And that, to me, means like some of these corruption cases that he's fighting, there are people who are not happy. And therefore, the only way to cripple the judicial services is to cut budgets. But having said that, remember, in 2013-2014, they were given the highest approval of 17 billion. This financial year, they were given 14 billion. Then because the budget cuts are being done across, theirs was now lowered to 11. 3 billion gone. But look at the amount of work that they have as a judiciary. That work involves movement, involves e-filing that they are trying to implement, involves those mobile courts. And so they cannot do that with 11 billion. I'm with Maraga. Number two, Maraga is not just any other person. Maraga is the president of the Supreme Court. Maraga is the chairman of the Judicial Service Commission. Maraga, in the pecking order, in the event of anything in terms of our governance, Maraga can actually fill in one of the biggest seats in acting capacity as the country puts itself in order. And therefore, when he comes out and speaks, like in public or functions, he is given a walk path to the dais, then I wonder how the government arms relate. When he comes out and says that there are people who want him out by end of the year, then I wonder how they look down upon him. When Maraga comes out and says they are not going to function as a judiciary if certain aspects of budget are not reversed, then I wonder how he relates with the others. But we all agree also that the budget cuts is across. We have seen Parliament, where Honorable Gakuya comes from, they have been cut, I think, almost by half. That is okay. But this is a crucial arm of government. She is from that department. She's a lawyer. And then she will tell you that the judicial authority works on certain principles. One of the principles is that when you delay justice, justice should never be delayed. If you are cutting budgets and the judges are not able to make rulings, they're not able to travel from one place, the circuits that they're doing, then the people that are seeking justice, including the executive, including the parliamentarians, their justice is being denied. That is the huge thing about this mess.
But even as you look at this, Frederick, is it probably that the CJ is also pulling a political move in the sense that now he's forcing the executive's hand to make a choice? He said that things are going to stop, won't be able to go. I will choose which functions I come to now. The onus is on you.
In
what
management,
your move next?
In management, there's what we call negotiation. And when you want to negotiate as a manager, you must paint the worst picture of your department so that you can see how you meet in the middle. That is what is called in management. And in that decision, it's called rational choice. But I don't want to believe that Maraga would be playing politics. For what purposes?
No,
He's the Chief Justice, for heaven's sake.
And allow me to jump in at this point. I have worked with Judge Maraga. He was a judge when I was a magistrate in Mombasa. He is not an excitable human being who can act on a whim. He's a very measured gentleman. He's a person who, even before he makes a point, he considers what he says. The fact that he actually stood on those steps by himself tells me his back is against the wall. The way he came out guns blazing was so uncharacteristic. Actually, those of us who know a little bit about him are looking at him wondering, wow, is this really a judge? Because he is a very measured individual. He's a person who he pursues peace rather than going for war. He's not a firebrand, you know? There are people you can tell, these ones, they spoil for a fight. Right. That is not our Chief Justice. So for him to have reached there, either he has tried to get audience and has failed, he has tried to address these issues diplomatically and has failed, and he got to a place where he felt constrained to let me put this out there for the public to hear, because the judges and the magistrates and the others are paid from the consolidated funds. Yes. So their salaries will not be stopped. But there are tribunals that sit in an ad hoc manner. There are circuit courts that sit in the
administrative part of it.
The administrative part of that is where you have authority to incur expenses. So they say the projects that are ongoing will not stop. But right now, if you go around, some of these projects have actually stalled because contractors have done work, raised certificates, and they have stuck there. We need to come to a place where we look at the Chief Justice, quote-unquote, rant as more of a wake-up call. And I agree with Fred. It's a chance also for the executive to say, you know what, okay, fine, ceasefire, let's sit down, let us see where is the problem really, so that we can address as much of it as possible.
Something I just want to add a bit. The Chief Justice also told us yesterday that when he seeks audience with the president, when he's going to State House, whether it is a function or it's a meeting, then he has to wait to be cleared, while he has a direct telephone contact to the president. Why is this happening? It appears there's a deliberate attempt to frustrate the CJ. And it points back to some of the examples he was giving. Is it that there are people in government that are unhappy with the decision that the judiciary has been making? Is it that there are people that are unhappy with Maraga as an individual? That's why they want him out at the end of the year. But you know what? Even if the government or whoever doesn't like Maraga, for whatever reasons, then they should respect the office of the Chief Justice. They should acknowledge the office of the Chief Justice. They should, most importantly, respect the people of Kenya who have the sovereign power that is delegated to the department or to the arm of government that Maraga heads. That is the law.
Honorable Maraga also spoke about the fact that moving forward is envisaging a point where they'll now get their budgetary approvals, not from Treasury, but they'll be coming to Parliament now for this, because they feel clearly it's untenable what's happening at the executive as Parliament, and you're being a sitting member right now. What's the way forward in terms of you being the third arm and seeing what's going on between the two terms? Is it time for you to step in and make sure now you legislate in terms of how the judiciary gets its money?
Jeff, very quickly, let me say that, in fact, we have already addressed that matter, because the registrar has already come to the table of the Budget Committee, and he has addressed this matter. And this matter is already being addressed by Budget Committee by looking the cutting areas. At that particular point also, we have already met the CS Treasury, and we have just negotiated about how not to touch on how to cripple the judiciary. And therefore, the Chief Justice cry is already dealt with by Parliament. So I think, as of this point, whatever possibly was to be cut, actually, as a Parliament, we have taken a control. Right. And therefore, judiciary is not going to suffer. Okay. But what I would say, we must distance two things. We must distance the services and politics. When we are saying, the Chief Justice is saying that, in fact, some people just want to see him off before 2 years, that one I would say it's wrong, because that probably is a hearsay, and we cannot build our cases on hearsay. But what I would say is that the linkage between the Chief Justice and the head of state must be very clear, because at any single time there might be a danger or a point of purpose that you need to talk directly to the head of state. So that particular window should not be shut by anybody. And therefore, if there are anybody who is trying to undercut that relationship or that direct relationship between the Chief Justice and the head of state, that is totally wrong. Okay. And if there is those kind of cartels, they should desist.
It's a developing story, so we'll see what the rejoinder is as far as that's concerned. But we want to move on to matters economy, because even as we're talking about this, we're waiting to see if the Senate will actually approve the raising of the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. It almost seems like it's home and dry there. The National Assembly approved it. It went to the Senate. We have a member of the National Assembly as well. And from the financial standard, looking at it, they're talking about why the economy is hurting. On the surface, every macroeconomic indicator looking good, but on the ground, as you see, vitally different. A serious cash crunch, job losses, a high debt ratio, even as a few well-connected individuals known as entrepreneurs take home all the loot of state's big spend. We're looking at an instance where when Treasury talks about it, they're talking about the GDP growing by 5.7%. But you look at the actual trickle-down effect, and even the CBK governor saying it's not felt. Job loss, cash crunches, the tax regime being untenable, and people are wondering, even as the government pursues these debts for infrastructure projects, is that really what we need right now? Because it almost seems like we have a government just wanting more and more infrastructure projects being done at the expense of everything else. It passed through the National Assembly. What is the rationale to that, Honorable Gakuya?
Geoffrey, let me say, I want to tell Kenyans that, in fact, first and foremost, we must also gauge ourselves from where we are coming from and where we are headed to. Because what has been there previously was this criteria of using the GBD to measure our levels of debts or borrowing. And at this particular point is that, in fact, we need to understand that actually the threshold was 50% of the GBD, and whereby the government exhausted that and went far much above to 60.1% of the GBD. In that particular case, the Treasury could not be able to borrow any other single penny because they have already exhausted the threshold and they have gone extra 10, 11%.
Shouldn't that have been the red flag?
That was a red flag because already the formula was already exhausted. And therefore, the reason why the government have backtracked to what we call numerical numbers or percentage, that percent is just to get out of this hook of what we call GBD measure. And that's why, in order for them to have at least an open kind of space to do extra borrowing. Let me say, it's not for the good of the country at all. Because one, we have seen a situation whereby the former CS was in public, telling the public that actually going to borrow 100 billion, and 80 billions are
paying debt.
To repay the debt. And the 20% was the one factored for development. This tells you why. That it is not a wise direction to borrow to develop and still borrow to repay, because that's a cycle. That's mark timing, and that tells that economy is poor, and your targets are not really measurable, are not within your targets. Then you need to look where you are and ask yourself a question. You have moved to China to look for extra borrowing, and they have said no. Your levels of borrowing are at red flag. We have seen a case of the United States. They have agreed to do the expressway, but at some point they say no. At this point, we are not saying no, but at least let's give your country time to at least fast track and find how you will be able to levelize your borrowing thresholds. At this point, let me say, I was one of those people that actually in budget committee who at least passed a resolution that we are not supposed to open that gap to 9 trillion. And we said that now we are at 60.1. Can we allow the government to go to 7.5? At least to take the government up to the next election. From there, the parliament is not migrating. It is just here. The CS will come back to house and still look for extra space to borrow if actually he has utilized prudently that particular space we have given him. But actually, that went to dead years. Actually, the pressure from up there.
Where is up there?
No, you know very well that actually the executive have to make sure that actually they force their way to go.
Okay, let me bring in Okango on this as well, because as you can hear, executive bulldozing his way as far as wanting this particular money is concerned, even if all the other economic indicators that they should be looking at are telling a different story. They're going to 9 trillion at a point where companies are unprecedented layoffs happening right now. We're having flower farms and different horticultural sectors closing farms as well. And the question begs, even as you take more money, what did the previous debt do for the country? Because it seems like it's getting worse and worse instead of better.
You know, we have been a country that has been known for theft of public money. So there are possibilities, actually high possibilities, that some of the money that were borrowed to effect some of the development was stolen. Now, the argument that the Treasury is putting today is that they need to push the ceiling to 9 trillion so that they can pay off some of the expensive loans and borrow locally cheap. Borrowing is borrowing. Today, if you borrow 1 bob from Mshwari, you still pay it with an interest. It is still expensive. So whatever amount you borrow is expensive. So I don't agree with that argument. Number 2, we have looked at how we have prioritized our developmental needs as a country. It is ridiculous to see some of the things that this country have been doing, putting money on. I'll give you a recent example. We put so much money in Huduma number. So much money. To date, we don't know what happened to Huduma number. We put so much money into infrastructural projects that we thought would break even within a year. They have not broken even. There's money lying there in form of a debt that we have to pay. We put so much money into human resource that is not valuable, is not giving returns to the economy. There's so many, the wage bill is so huge and the returns are minimal. What has happened? And therefore, for me, I'm looking at it like this. While the economy is suffering, we are undergoing what is called a triple crisis. A triple crisis, we have got financial inequalities, credit crunch. We have got the environmental crisis, that the erratic weather, look at the reason we had floods in some of those areas. We knew floods will come. We're putting money there. The drought will come after the floods. And what are we doing with that water? Can we tap it so that we can use it in some other production, even agriculture, so that we build? We are not doing that. We have a social crisis where people are just dying because of frustrations. Sometimes back we used to see people are committing suicide. The inequality is just too much. When you walk out of this CBD and go to some of these slums, you will realize that we are not equal at all because of this issue of management of our resources. What I would advise this government to do, and this is a free advice, we must prioritize. And in terms of making decisions, let us look at a rational choice where we evaluate what is before us, the criteria, and arrive at what we really need to implement. There are projects that the government has put emphasis on, and they're not a priority. And there are projects that they have sidelined and are a priority to this country. We say that we are an agricultural country. But look, we still import food. We still import food from desert countries like Israel. You know? So what are we doing? Okay. For me, the parliament now, in terms of budget, when they're going to do allocation in the next financial year, what they need to do, they look at our agricultural sector. We need to put more money so that we don't suffer. Because if a country is suffering from such a thing that we have in the economy, it means even the agricultural sector is hurting. We cannot produce. We cannot eat. We are food insecure. Number 2, in terms of job creation, we have seen the job cuts. People are laying off. Why are they laying off? Because they are no longer able to sustain that workforce. Why are they not able to sustain? Because there's no money circulating. Why? People are holding money in their houses. Theft. They are not putting that money in the bank so that it can circulate and people can get it back. The mama burger that you buy burger from today will tell you that she no longer makes the money that she used to make every day 2 years ago. Because you're not able to go and buy vegetables every day or fruits every day. You are saying, I can buy once a week only. You are prioritizing. We must cut our coat according to our size.
Joy, we're having a situation where we've had the IMF and World Bank pointing at this debt issue. You really need to relook it. We have the Parliament Budgetary Office talking about the same issue as well, saying we need not raise this debt ceiling. But you have a situation where we've had from above, the pressure is really strong. And it almost feels like this is home and dry. Now that it's at the Senate, once it goes for approval, the pressure will come again and it will sail through.
Parliament should just be honest with us. Because under our current system of government, Parliament stands alone. Parliament stands independent. They have the power to stop the executive excesses. That is what their oversight role is about. That is why they're keeping the big bucks of the 85% of this country's GDP for themselves, because they think that they are prudent and strong enough to stand against the excesses of the executive. So for them to start giving us that tired line of calls from above, surely you're not buying it. You're 350 people versus one person. Surely can you not all text him and say, no, 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 no. And when it comes to voting, let the Hansard bear you witness that you stood your ground, because we, the voters, are looking at you to speak
Grace,
on
don't
our
forget
behalf.
that we are in hardship. We are in hardship.
This handshake
environment.
is not an iron box.
That's the route the executive is using to count the numbers.
So they're reaching over to the handshake on the other side.
Honorable Raila is not an elected member in that house. You are. The president is an elected member, but to serve as president, not in the National Assembly. It is you 350 people sitting in that National Assembly who ought to oversee the excesses, checks and balances. That's what each arm of government does over the other. Play your role. That's what we're paying you for. Otherwise, if you cannot do your job, we will tell you where you can take your inactivity, and we find people who can bring activity where pressure comes to bear. National Assembly must become assertive. And fine, you can say the Senate looks like it's home and dry, and probably is. But I wish for once we had leaders who are selfless, who thought beyond handshake, who thought beyond the calls that came from above and say, you know what, I have people who are suffering here. Let us think outside the box with this one. Why am I saying this? Kenyans have this really peculiar habit, and you alluded to it, Fred. You borrow from Tala to pay Okash, you borrow from Okash to Fuliza, you pay Fuliza, you come back, and you have this merry-go-round of managing debt by taking more debt to keep. Do you know you're not making any progress? In fact, Mheshimiwa gave it a good word. It's mark timing. You're stuck, you're going around at the same spot because you're tethered to debt. Debt is crippling. Even the Bible says, by the way, debt is a bad thing. It's one of those things that keeps you from moving forward. You'd rather be a lender than a borrower. And as a country, we need to come to a place where we say, enough is enough. Can we cut our cloth according to our coat according to our cloth? We have to look at, let's look back and learn. There's a time when we're given these structural adjustment programs by the Bretton Woods institutions. And we're told, you know what, you guys can restructure and you can do it so that we can be able to give you more money. So because we wanted World Bank to give us more money, what did we do? We went for these things. And that's where, as far as I'm concerned, in the economy, that's where we started seeing some of these things we are seeing now. The economic inequalities, the inflation, the lowering of the standards of the living of Kenyans, how much money gets into Kenyans' pockets. That's when we started seeing more theft, more grand corruption. Because now, yes, the money would come, the loans from the Bretton Woods would come, but it would be siphoned off the top. We need to come to a place where we have a courageous enough leadership that says, you know what, enough is enough. Now we shall be those people who, if all we have is sima na ukwaju, that's what we are eating. It's sima na ukwaju. Let us lose the taste for the finer things of life. Because Kenya right now, it has champagne taste on a beer budget. We cannot live like this. We have to get to a place where we say, for the sake of our children's children, what we have is enough. But can we work to build what we have to something extra? Okay. Why? If we are forced, for example, to no longer borrow so that we must use what we are raising in terms of the economy, the revenue generated in the country, then you'll not have a CS who's courageous to read you a budget for 6 trillion, knowing full well you are not even raising 2 trillion in the economy. Right. We'll have somebody who's more realistic. And that is what we need, courageous leaders who will be patriots and do what is good for this nation, and not just what works for them and their cronies. Okay. It's not fair.
It's an issue that has been brought across. Even as we get to our parting shots,
I'll just say this. Let us not ignore the political setup of the House. That, you know, at this particular era of hardship, we have Wiper, we have what we call ODM, and the rest. And let me tell you, those guys before they were being talked to, we were in the same pages. But we found that when we come to the floor of the chamber, you find them on a different mood. Then this is what kills the floor of the House. Right. When you have team that is for that courageousness and taking decision, actually they are outnumbered because, you know, it's a game of numbers.
And I'm assuming, Honorable Gakuya, even as you say that, if we looked at the Hansard, you are against this
I was against and totally against. Even to date,
fact check.
I feel I'm not supposed to be part of it.
Okay, we shall check that, Honorable Gakuya. Okay, yes. We have 2 minutes to go and we'd like to have our parting shots. Let's start from here, 30 seconds each. What's your parting shot this morning?
All the best to our KCSE students.
Oh, yeah, day 2.
They're sitting a very important exam and we wish them all the best. But in terms of what we've discussed this morning, frustrating the judiciary is cutting off your nose to spite your face. It is counterproductive. I wish that the executive and the National Assembly, as well as the Senate, would rise to the occasion and just right this wrong. Okay. There are places to save money, but by frustrating the judiciary and by frustrating the Chief Justice, one day you will need to run to those courts And you will find them also waiting to revisit. So it is a game no one is going to win. Let's just stop it.
Okay. Fred, your parting shot.
I just have one question as a parting shot. And the question I'm asking is the big question. Is Maraga the face of a brave and independent judiciary, or is he being frustrated by a rogue executive? The media should answer that question by doing investigation and ask difficult questions that should be answered. And my last one, this country will not be built by politicians who believe in an agreement between two individuals. This country will be built by politicians and leaders who believe in the people that put them in office. Those are the people that they vowed and took oath of office to protect in the Constitution of Kenya by serving. That is the bottom line.
Okay. Thank you so much. Honorable Gakuya, your parting shot this morning.
My parting shot is that, in fact, now, Jeff, we are in what we call the Big Four. I would say for Nairobi, in the area of housing. It is very unfortunate that actually if we are unable to do what we call land economics, then we are doing zero. Nairobi is not a tremor land where you fear to go to Stole. And I would say that we must move out from this what we call 5 stories to 8 stories, and we must go to 20, that number of stories in the new housing to accommodate the kind of numbers building up in the city.
Okay, of course, we leave it at that particular point in time. Thank you so much for making time this morning, Honorable James Gakuya, of course, Embakasi North MP, Frederick Okango, SG, Third Way Alliance, thank you so much, and of course, Joymdivo, Executive Director, East Africa Center for Law and Justice, thank you so much for making time this morning. The debate continues, of course, as well, because we want to hear your views as far as this is concerned. It goes on online at K24TV. You can also SMS us, as always, once again, on 21222. Take a short break. When you come back after that, we get interactive. Good morning.